So big old packet of homeworks is going around. Grab yours. Pass on the rest of the pile. Again, if you forgot to turn in the homework assignment yesterday, make sure you get it done. It was only the front page you have to worry about being done because we decided we didn't need to deal with the back one. Yes? We good? Everyone happy? Let's see. I'm going to make sure. All right. All right. So, sampling distribution. This is dealing with the normal curve. We've dealt with the normal curve quite a bit. Okay. So, basically, some key things that you want to know about this page is you want to talk about something they call a parameter about halfway down. They are numerical characteristics of an entire population. Most of the time, parameters are unknown. Okay? So, what we're going to start dealing with is it's pretty much next to impossible and really expensive to collect data from an entire population. Okay, the United States does it every 10 years called the census. And then you get all the people who think they're lawyers during the census, like, they're violating my rights. No, it's in the United States Constitution that a census will be taken every 10 years. That's the entire population. So a census is really the only way that we truly know the parameters of stuff. And like the last census that came out, they wanted to know how many televisions and how many toilets or bathrooms in the house. And like how many people are living in the house. Okay? And people are like, this is violating my rights. I'm like, really? Like they could pull your credit card information and figure out how many televisions you purchased. So it's not a violation of your rights. It is the right of the United States government to do a census every 10 years. It is in the Constitution. But because a census takes an unbelievable amount of manpower, it takes an unbelievable amount of time, we had to figure out something in statistics, how I could say, hey, how can I randomly select a certain amount of people, and then I could, with some sort of confidence interval, say, I'm either like 90% confident that if I were to resample my population, my stuff would fit in within these boundaries, or 95%, or 99%, or 80%. So there's confidence intervals that we'll start getting to. So parameters are characteristics of an entire population, and then most of the time, we don't know exactly what the parameters are. We know kind of where they are at. Okay? Statistics are numerical characteristics of a sample. They are measured and calculated directly from the sample. Okay? So we start taking statistics from the sample. So if we were looking at brown eyes or brown hair or something like that, we could say, we know that approximately 30% of the population has brown hair. I'm just making this up. But you would be able to look at your sample and figure out more from that. Again, sample, the main thing for a sample, words that I want you to write down at the top of this page. Write the word random. Write the word random. Because if something wasn't a random sample, that means that not everybody had the same percent chance of getting selected. So you want random to take place. Okay? They have a population mean, and they have a population standard deviation. They have a sample mean, and they have a sample standard deviation. And a lot of times you have the symbols. So when you see the Greek letter mu, looks like a U, kind of like that. This is the population mean. When you see the Greek letter, it looks like a 6 kind of sideways. That's phi. And that is the population standard deviation. And then you have the sample mean, which is just X bar. And you have the sample standard deviation, which they just use S. Okay? So here's the thing. You might not ever know the population average. Okay? Population is everybody. You might not know that average. But from the sample average or the sample mean, you might be able to say with a certain confidence. This is where like law mixes in with math. And when I say that, I mean like legal terms. You're using words to protect yourself when you make statements or evaluations based on a sample. And again, that's basically you're going to get to a point where we're going to start creating a hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis and a null hypothesis. Okay, those are things we'll go over. Basically, you have one statement that might be the population has, 30% of the population has brown eyes. And then your alternative to that would be less than 30% of the population has brown eyes, or more than 30% of the population has brown eyes. Or if you have something called two-tailed test, you say the population does not equal 30% of brown eyes. Okay, so those are things that we'll cover. So these questions premeditates all the statistical research to this. Do we trust the sample to represent the population? Okay, so if I were to, even if I did a random collection of data in the United States, I wanted to base it on the United States, but I randomly sampled just people in the state of Tennessee and said, okay, this is what everyone thinks. Is that fair? I'm picking on Tennessee because I don't know, it arbitrarily came to mind. Or if I said, we're going to take a random sample from the state of New Jersey and then we're going to apply it to the rest of the United States. Is that fair? No. I mean, who wants New Jersey? Come on, I was born there. Moved out of that state in 73. So you're going to be seeing like kind of the legal jargon because you can't say 100% definitively something's going to happen. You can say, I am this percent confident this will take place. And we just got done with a small little election. I don't know if you know about that. But there was polls that have taken place. Were the polls right? No. Were the polls wrong? No. Okay? If you read into what they were saying with the polls, they would say with 95% confidence, we could say if we resampled the same thing by using all the same characteristics of how we randomly selected people, we would fall back in within this data. So you're not 100% certain. So a lot of times, you watch the news is always wrong. Okay, the news sits there and they want to point fingers. If you look at CNN, they want to point to the right, that what the right did wrong. If you watch Fox, they want to point their finger at the left and say what the left did wrong. Okay, I kid you not. It's all incorrect statistics. As a statistician, what you really have to do is, if you really want to know what's taking place, is you evaluate both media sources, take a step back, and think about what the greater picture really would be, rather than, oh, this falls into my political thoughts, so I'm going to go with this, and that has to be truth. And unfortunately, we've been inundated through social media. You get these people going, oh, I'm an influencer, therefore I know what I'm talking about. No, they don't. Okay, you just found something that fell within your belief system, therefore it must be true. Okay, there was a statistical test done a few years, this is 25, 30 years ago, that said drinking 1 glass of red wine a day is good for your heart. Okay, and people went and started buying red wine like crazy because it's like, oh, they said it was good for my heart. Well, the Grape Growers Association put on the statistics. What's wine made out of? Grapes. Okay? So, though people really wanted it to be true, drinking a glass of wine, man, I love wine. I want to drink wine all the time. I'm just saying how people were. I mean, I enjoy a glass of wine, don't get me wrong. I'm not really a big drinker by any means. I never have been. Not because I have a problem with it, and I don't have a problem with people who have that problem, but yeah, that's just it. So random sampling at the very top. The individual selections in the sample is just a portion. Okay, you are like a sample of Cherry Creek High School, correct? I mean, you got to figure you got 33 math teachers in this department. Each teacher teaches 5 classes. That's a whole lot of different math classes. You're just one small sample. You are not a random sample because you are part of my class. Okay? You're not a random sample. If I said, hey, we just took Stirrup's class as a sample and applied it to the rest of the school, though all of you are always right and the rest of the school is always wrong, it's still not statistically sound to do it that way. So random sampling, the individual selections in the sample were randomly chosen from the population of interest. This implies that each individual in the population of interest had an equal chance to be in that sample. Okay? I can't emphasize that enough. These are things that when you are looking into stuff, yes, don't get me wrong. If you're watching something and it falls into something you like, that's great. That's your entertainment. But if you want to be the statistician, take a step back and see what's really taking place. Don't get me wrong. If I watch a TikTok of a guy that flips over on his bike and snaps his, elbow the wrong way and he stands up and his elbow's going the wrong way, I enjoy watching that. That's funny to me. Okay? Not everyone likes watching that, but I can't say that that was just entertainment. But when you get someone saying, this is what this presidential candidate said, and therefore it's wrong, as a statistician, you really need to take a step back and see the bigger picture. I'm not saying that every political candidate is a good person by any means. Okay? I'm just saying that people will hold on to something or a fragment of something or what somebody said and say, this person is really bad because they said this. Friends, if you could take a fragment of anything I said throughout my career, you could make me the worst person in the world. I will tell you a story about a kid that I had many years ago. This is when I was an assistant principal. Yes, I was an assistant principal for 3 months. And then we had, kid you not, then I realized how much I hated it. I didn't like that 95% of my workload was dealing with like 2% of the population, the bad kids. We had a teacher who went on maternity leave, and I said, hey, they're going on maternity leave. They're retiring from teaching. I'm going to go back in the classroom, and I've never looked back, and I couldn't be happier. I was miserable at the time, but I will tell you, there was a kid named Erasmo de la Fuente. Okay? This is in 1999. So, Erasmo is in my office daily. Erasmo didn't know how to behave like the rest of the population. Christy Eason, who is his science teacher, wrote him up every day. You want to know what Christy Eason wrote him up every day for? I'm going to show you. So why do you think Chris Stirrup, this guy, goes and buys a box of 1,000 pencils every year? 1,000. Okay, I still got a lot.
Yeah.
Because people might forget to bring a pencil. Oh. Christy Eason wrote him up every day because he would show up to class without a pencil. And I was like, Christy, you go to church, right? Yeah, steal all the little pencils at church, little golf pencils they have in the pews. Oh, I can't do that. I'm like, Christy, fine. I'm going to go buy you a box of 500 golf pencils for $2.50. Keep it in your room. She's like, no, it's not my job to supply a pencil. I'm like, who cares? But she would write them up. So I'm sitting in my office. Here comes Erasmo for like the 455th time in the 3rd week of school. I was like, Erasmo, can you swing by my office every day and get a pencil? Erasmo went sideways on me. He starts screaming, and he starts yelling, and he starts punching the wall. And the school cop came walking in to my office, and I'm watching this 15-year-old little gangbang student. Okay, yeah, he was part of Southside. He was jumped in the Southside. That was one of the big gangs in Reno. He was just livid at me. And so I'm just letting him vent because most things don't bother me. But he gave me a jab that I didn't like. He told me that my wife was a slut. Now the line's been crossed, and Stirrup is going to go from this nice, mellow person to, I'm going to be the coach, and I'm going to bark at you like you have never been barked at before. And I railed him. I raised my voice with him. I let him know. And part of a statement that I had said, I'm going to say this is part of a statement I said. The part that he hung on to that came back and bit me in the butt was, you're not going to amount to anything in life. That was only a portion of what I said. At the front end of it, I was like, Erasmo, you screaming and yelling and insulting people, you being, jeopardizing yourself, getting arrested for disorderly conduct right now. This behavior is going to amount to you not being to amount to anything in life. And that's that little fragment. So what I said was wrong. If you look at the fragment, yes. If you look at the whole thing, maybe I shouldn't have said it directly like that, but I was ticked. He insulted my wife. Okay? Insult me all day long, I got thick skin. Insult my wife, you insult my family, you don't get kind, nice stirrup. Okay? All right, so random sampling. An individual selection in the sample were randomly chosen from the population of interest. This implies that each individual in the population of interest has an equal chance to be part of the sample. Okay? That means that I have to figure out a way to randomly select people, and I could give everybody a number, and then I could use a random number generator on the computer. I could use a random number generator, which is located in the back of most statistics books, which are just random numbers. I can do all of these things to get randomness. Okay? Our human brain cannot establish random. Okay? If I were to say, Connor, you're in big trouble. Why did I pick Connor? Well, you're not in big trouble by any means. Why did I pick Connor? Because I saw Connor out of the corner of my eye looking down. That's how my randomness took place, and it wasn't random. Okay, so Connor, sorry, you're not random, pal. Okay. Independence, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. The probability of the individual's response was unaffected by the conditions in which the other selections were made. Okay, let's say that again. Independence, the probability of an individual's response was unaffected by the conditions by which the selections were made. Okay, if I were to put a gold coin in my right hand, and I were to walk up and I'd say, okay, coin's in this hand. I'm doing this. You're probably going to be able to take this hand because your conditions, I got one hand closer to you going here. He's trying to hide that gold coin from me. Okay? So you can't allow a condition to impact somebody's answer to something. Okay? The sample size is large enough. How many people do I sample is enough for me to apply to the rest of the population? Okay? I'm going to tell you. There's two different thoughts on this. Sometimes people will say it's the square root of your population is how big your sample should be. And that's one way of looking at statistics. The other way of looking at statistics is if you have a random sample of 30 people, you can apply it to the rest of the population. Let's think about that for a minute. If I were to randomly select throughout the United States 30 people on whether they felt, I don't know, what's a big one without getting us into too much of a debate? That the government takes too much in taxes. The government takes too much in taxes. Okay, if I randomly selected 30 people throughout the United States, that is a large enough amount of my population of the, 730 million people in the United States, something like that? 30 people is enough to sample. Okay, so is the sample size large enough? Right now, we want to think of the word 30. If you have less than 30, you use something called a t-distribution, which we will get to. A t-distribution approaches a normal distribution. And the nice thing is Desmos deals with it very nicely. Okay, so it says, consider the following example. Let's assume that cholesterol levels nationwide have a mean of 195 and a standard deviation of 25. Of course, we would never simply know this, but we are pretending to know that for the purposes of this example. So as the medical researchers collects data from the database of 2,000 patients at a local Denver hospital from this group of patients. He calculates the mean cholesterol level to be 192. 192 is the sample, and the standard deviation of 21. All right, so things that we can answer about this. We have a population mean. Our population mean is 195. That was given to us originally. How did they get to that? I mean, honestly, they could have looked at all of the databases of all the doctor's offices, which are all tied into cdc.gov, and we could probably figure out that 195 is a pretty accurate number. Okay, we could also find the standard deviation. Sample mean is 192. So look at this. Our population is 195. Our sample is 192. Okay? Okay, is 192 and 195 close enough to each other statistically? It could be. Is the population standard deviation is 25? We got that from our overall database. Our sample standard deviation, we selected a certain amount of people. In this case, we sampled 2,000 people. 2,000 is bigger than 30, so is our sample big enough? Oh yeah. Okay, because we only need a sample of 30. Okay, sample standard deviation is 21. So we get all this information from this information. Primary goal of the researchers hope that the sample is representative of the population. In other words, the sample mean of 192 is a reasonable estimate of the population mean. Okay, is there anything in this paragraph that this is pointing to the United States? Is there anything in that paragraph that is a red flag for you right now? Anything that's a red flag? Where did we get our sample from? Huh?
A local.
A local Denver hospital. That, my friends, is a red flag. That's something where you're like, this is not statistically significant. You can't take from one thing, and they'll argue, oh, but it was random. No, you took from a local hospital. Okay? Is it possible, and I don't know this, but if I knew nothing about anything of medicine, something I could say is, well, perhaps the elevation of Colorado in Denver, a mile high, changes cholesterol because of a lower amount of oxygen. That is a very possible thing. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is very possible. So people who are living at sea level might have a different cholesterol level than people who live in Denver just because of the elevation. So because we say a local hospital in Denver, that right there is something that if they start making conclusions based on this, you have my permission. Any statistics class from here on out, you say, there's my Latin for the day. Ready? You guys ready to learn some Latin? Bovis stercus. Bovis means bovine. Bovine means cow. Stercus means dung. Dung means shit. Got it? I just told you how to say bullshit in Latin. Or shit. I only took Latin for 3 years. I don't remember all of them. That was like one of the key things I got. It's like, dude, I learned how to say a bad word in Latin. It's great. Bovis stercus. Kid you not, 3 years of Latin in high school, and that's all I got out of it. I'm sorry. I know you guys thought I was a better person. Okay. We look for signs in the sample that might not represent the population at large. One sign we just said, a local Denver hospital. Yes, we like the randomness. Randomness is wonderful. Randomness is great. But it was at a local Denver hospital that we did a random sample from. Okay? So we just took a sample from a certain place. Okay? Is there any reason to suggest this estimate wouldn't be trusted? Yeah. Okay, it says, although the sample size is quite large, it's way bigger than 30, it's 2,000. It can't be trusted because we took it from a local Denver hospital and we're applying it to the rest of the United States. Okay, if the goal is to estimate the nationwide mean cholesterol level, they need a random select people from the entire population of interest, the entire United States. That includes Alaska and Hawaii and any of the U.S. territories. Okay? So there's a big concern. Doesn't mean that this estimate's wrong. It could possibly be wrong. But when you have red flags just in your disclaimer, how do you trust the rest of the study? And that's a big thing. This is where I am such a big jerk when I go to those district things and I start throwing statistics at me, and I'm like, no, but you're wrong. This is not how statistics is done. And they sit there and they want to argue with me saying, no, this is correct. And I'm like, no, you have no idea what you're talking about. And they're like, yes, we do. And I'm like, no, you don't. And, it becomes this whole debate that I go back and forth with people. And that's, when they're like, hey, we have this neat new way that teaches kids math in this method. And I look at them and I say, no, you don't. You don't have this neat new way. Okay? Especially because most things in life will regress back to the mean. Okay? You might show me a new way to teach something, and I might be excited about it because I buy into it. And what I'll do is I'll be excited about it, and I might show an initial spike in better test scores, but eventually I'm going to burn out on this new exciting idea as a teacher, and I'm going to regress back what the average had been. Okay? And it's funny to watch people that sit there and try and justify it. I am a huge jerk at these meetings because I call Bovis Sturkis on it all the time. Okay? So there's big concern. Does it mean it's wrong? Possibly. We now have reason to doubt this estimate, which does not make for strong evidence. What researchers do when they know their sample is not representative of the population interest, they continue the research. So it's great if you wanted to do a random selection from a local hospital and you see a trend, then you do the research again and get the entire population into part of your random sample so you can see maybe there was something that went towards it. If we could go out to the street light over here at Yosemite and Union, the one that has a car accident about every third period. Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about? And I said this is a very dangerous intersection, and it's more dangerous than any other intersection throughout the state of Colorado. It might be, but it might just be random chance, and it's because it's close to us that we know that it's dangerous. Okay. They continue research. There is still valuable things learned, and future researcher might repeat the study with different sample to expand upon the research. That's kind of a big thing. Research upon research upon research. We went through this great research thing a few years ago called COVID. Okay? And people said, oh, this mRNA vaccine, it's only experimental. No one knows anything about it. And you know what I say? I say, hey, you realize that people who have cystic fibrosis have been getting mRNA vaccines for the past 30 years? It's not brand new. Well, how do you know that? Because I know things. I step back and take a look at stuff. Okay? We heard all the politics behind it. Oh, this is the government trying to control us. Oh, you can't do this. Don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. What's the right idea? I don't know. Oh, they made the vaccine too fast. It doesn't really work. Okay. I mean, I've had COVID 4 times and I've had 7 COVID shots. I have friends in Arizona who have not gotten 1 COVID shot and they've yet to have COVID. So does the COVID shot work? Well, just because Chris Stirrup knows someone in Arizona that never got a COVID shot and never had COVID, and Chris Stirrup's gotten 7 COVID shots and has had COVID 4 times, that right there, that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, saying that's statistically significant, and it's not. Okay? Me knowing something, I mean, that might be something I would want to do research on if I was, into this kind of stuff, but I don't think it's true. Okay? So I think it's coincidental that I got COVID even though I got a COVID shot. It's just a mere coincidence. Okay, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go get COVID shots. Heck, King Super gave me $20 to get a COVID shot the other day. 2 months ago, it was awesome. I like money. All right, so. All right, so our assignment to take a look at, and which we'll go over, is going to be on page
73.
73. Page 73 will be your homework. Try 73, 74. Give me an honest couple of minutes. We'll go over it tomorrow, make sure we feel comfortable with it. But we're going to have some fun with this stuff. And you thought I was animated first semester. Man, this semester, this is the meat and potatoes. This is the stuff that stir up argues. I